Welcome back to the channel, everyone. RonMan here, and today we're going to be taking a look at a bunch of different versions of the original Shadowgate. Nostalgia. Just saying that word can oftentimes be enough just to make us smile. Taking a moment to think about the past can be so satisfying. A lot of us feel nostalgic for video games we grew up playing, and when that nostalgia hits us in the face, it's one of the best feelings. Video games and nostalgia always seem to go hand in hand. When you go back and play the exact game you played when you were younger, it's still the same. It hasn't changed. Video games can feel like time capsules. For me, Shadowgate is no different. This game was in my house before I can even remember. I often tried to play it, even before I could read. But once I was able to read somewhat competently, that's when I was able to actually submerge myself into the world of Shadowgate. A few years later, my mom introduced me to Deja Vu, another point-and-click adventure game in the same vein as Shadowgate. It wasn't until my early 20s that I discovered Uninvited, and I don't know how I went so long without knowing about this game. I love Shadowgate and consider it to be the quintessential point-and-click adventure game. For that reason, I thought it'd be neat to take a look at a few different versions of the original game. Because this is a puzzle-heavy game, I'm going to try to limit how many puzzle solutions I reveal. So first, I'll go over the story. The story goes a little something like this. Long ago, a great council of sorcerers existed, the Circle of 12. One from that group of mighty wizards fell into the black arts. He was forever named the Warlock Lord, and sought to subjugate the people of Kaltorlin. However, the remaining members of the Circle, led by the powerful Lakemere the Timeless, succeeded in imprisoning the Evil One in a deep cavern below Castle Shadowgate. Centuries passed, and the land enjoyed peace and prosperity as the Warlock Lord bided his time deep below. An unfortunate accident, triggered by a group of dwarves, released the evil from his magical cell. Seizing control of Castle Shadowgate, the Warlock Lord turned his control towards summoning the mighty Titan, the Behemoth. With this powerful creature at his side, the Warlock Lord would be unstoppable. Only someone from the ancient line of kings, of which the prophecies speak of, can stand against this evil. Only a hero descended from the lost royal family can bring ruin to the Warlock Lord's dark schemes. That hero is you. Will you accept the task of freeing Shadowgate Castle from the clutches of the evil Warlock Lord and prevent his plans for revenge? Shadowgate was originally released in 1987 for the Apple Macintosh. Well, this is it, the very first version. As you can see, it's in black and white. I don't mind the look, although sometimes it can be hard to figure out what you're supposed to be looking at, or where your attention is supposed to be drawn. Still though, it gets the job done, and I think it's kinda neat. This version also has no music, just the occasional sound effect. I don't see this as a bad thing, just different. As you can see, you have many different actions at your disposal. You use these to explore the castle, solve puzzles, and avoid traps. I love examining the environment. By doing this, Shadowgate paints a bigger picture of where you are, and can either suggest a hint or provide backstory. Sometimes it'll just give you a general description of what you're looking at, and to me, this really helps to immerse the player. Sometimes there's even humor thrown in. I think it's cool that you can rearrange the windows and even change their size. Your inventory has a limited capacity despite being able to make it bigger. This means you'll need to drop items when you think you won't need them anymore. You're also going to want to collect as many torches as you can. They act as a sort of time limit. If your torch goes out, you'll need to restart or reload, and luckily, you can do this at any time. When your torch is almost dead, the game will notify you. It can be easy to miss, however, as there's no audio cue when this occurs, just text. Also, be ready with a notepad. When you discover spells, you need to keep track of them yourself, as this version doesn't do that for you. To use a spell, you click Speak, then type the name of the spell, and then click on the object on which you'd like to cast the spell. Even though there's no music or color, it's still a fun playthrough and a great way to experience Shadowgate. About a year later, on the Apple II GS, a colorized version of Shadowgate was released. It's mostly the same game, but with color, and some new sound effects. Both of these versions can be purchased on Steam. In fact, you can buy the whole Mac Venture series for under $10. Shadowgate was ported to the NES in 1989. Like many of us, this is the version that I played first. The NES version has color and, for the first time, music. The music is fantastic too, and I think it adds a lot to the atmosphere. There's also some other quality of life improvements as well. The inventory space is now unlimited and is nicely displayed as a list. Some items will be discarded automatically when you no longer need them, like keys, for example. Spells are now saved into your spell inventory, so no need to write them down manually. When your torch is running out, the music changes to alert you. The only drawback of this version is not having a mouse, but to be honest, the D-pad seems fine to me. This version has all the same content the original has, minus one thing: the Goblin Room. I looked around the internet to find out more information, but I eventually decided to reach out to one of the developers via email, and to my surprise, I got a response. Turns out they cut the Goblin Room out of the NES version because of cartridge space. Of all the rooms in the game, the Goblin Room was chosen for removal because it wasn't integral for the game's story. It was just another way for you to die. But I think part of the fun is finding out how to die and reading the gloomy descriptions of your final moments. In 1999, two Shadowgate games were released: Shadowgate 64, Trials of the Four Towers, and Shadowgate Classic for the Game Boy Color. Shadowgate Classic is very much the NES version, but with slightly nicer graphics and, because of the smaller screen, a different display. This version is perhaps a little easier because you're able to bring up hints by pressing select. When porting console games to handheld systems, sometimes the reduced screen size can ruin the game. Thankfully, that's not the case here. Shadowgate is still great on a small screen. And that's all there really is to say about Shadowgate Classic. It's mostly the NES version. Shadowgate for the Game Boy Color also does not contain the Goblin Room. Fast forward to 2014, Shadowgate emerges from the shadows, completely reimagined. Originally released on PC, it was later ported to Xbox One, PS4, Nintendo Switch, and iOS. I'll be playing this on Nintendo Switch. Shadowgate looks completely different, and I think the new art direction is absolutely beautiful. You're now able to choose your difficulty and whether or not to turn on hints. This is nice, especially for new players. They've added so much more to this: new locations, items, puzzles, monsters, and of course, new ways to die. A lot of the returning puzzles even have different solutions, even if the difference is minimal. The other versions of Shadowgate are mostly the same game. If you've beat it on NES, for example, you've pretty much beat it on Game Boy Color as well. Although this is still Shadowgate, these changes and improvements truly make this feel like a new game. So that's just a glimpse into the history of Shadowgate. If you're new to the series and are interested, I would recommend starting out with the 2014 version just because the visuals, the hint system, and the difficulty settings, although you can't go wrong with any version. You can download the 8-Bit Adventure Anthology Volume 1 on Steam, PS4, and Xbox One, and this includes the NES versions of Shadowgate, Deja Vu, and Uninvited. For me, my favorite is the NES version. I just love the music, the graphics, and going back in time. Perhaps it's just the nostalgia slapping me in the face. Guys, I want to thank you so much for watching. Please hit that like button, please subscribe, and I'll see you next week.